Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and tonight I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted. How are you doing this final level evening, sir?
I'm doing good. My computer's a little sluggish tonight, but I think it's gonna
Oh,
it's gonna pull through.
all right, well, let us know if we have to, help it limp along or revitalize it with something.
Say a prayer
But
to the
tonight,
say a prayer to the All Father.
but tonight we're going to talk about mimics, huh?
That's the plan. Um, so Mimics is like one of those iconic D&D monsters. It's become a running joke. Like everything's a mimic. The mimic is so memeable. There's so many mimic memes. And
I mean, I love the one that's the tavern.
yeah,
There's a bunch of adventurers, and the bartender's like, oh, why do you have why do you carry weapons with you into the bar? It's like, oh, it's the mimics. The adventurers laughed, the bartender laughs, the table laughs, we kill the table. Great times were had by all.
yeah, it's good stuff. So the mimic's been around since the very beginning of D&D, and I'm pretty sure I use a mimic at least once in every campaign.
I I love me some mimics. They are in fact, in my top three or top five for D&D monsters. We've talked, time and time again about Displacer Beast being my number one, my numero uno. Uh, but I feel like mimics get a bad rap all the time. And from a lore perspective, there's not a whole lot that's out there that, is official, especially for 5e, that are about mimics. It's like, oh, nobody knows what they look like in their natural state. They're these powerful shapeshifters that can be whatever have you. And I'm like, man, but you could do so much more with them. And I don't feel like a lot of GMs ever do that and ever like put personalities or put anything beyond, well, this is just a hazard monster that you have to deal with. And
In my
that is just so frustrating.
in my mind, the true form of a mimic, it looks like the tar monster from Scooby Doo, only it's all flesh colored. It's just made of gooey flesh.
Sure. And that makes sense. And in fact, like in last night's game, which is what kind of preempted this, let's put mimics in the forefront, is you used a whole bunch of mimics on us all at once. And in a normal campaign where we fight one, maybe two combats in a session, last night's session was pretty much all combat. That we had
it,
four. Go
it
ahead.
it was literally like 5 or 6 encounters that you guys just kept. Well, you wouldn't stop. You guys were out of control. It's just like I keep going forward. I'm like, okay.
So I think it was four encounters, that were there, unless like some things kind of got combined. But we're in this you know, underground room, and there's hallways that lead off in a variety of different directions. And like we begin exploring our area, and you start describing about sounds coming from two different directions all at once. Now, I guess we could have said, all right, well, let's move in one direction so that we're not trapped here with this pincher maneuver, but we didn't. So we had ogres coming from one side and fire newts riding abyssal chickens or whatever they were coming from the other. And while it was intense, we were able to handle all of it, with, only a little bit of minor, wear or drain. But then it led to, okay, well, let's go loot this section. But because we used thunder waves, it brought in a whole bunch of dark dwarves, and we had to kill them too. And again, we kept using thunder wave, which we then begin looking around at our surroundings some more, and we get drawn in by the gems that are inside the ground over here. So we walk up to that. Now, mind you, two of our melee fighters at this point in time have about 14 hit points each, and we're 10th level characters. So we had been battered down over the course of these three combats. And it's like, I don't know, man. But
So,
the
see,
ground begins to undulate and move, and these mimics come up and descend upon us.
So you guys ended the session with you guys had encountered some Myconids and were able to communicate with them and kind of like have a peaceful encounter. But you guys brought a bunch of dancing lights into a darkened area, which drew the
Yeah,
attention of creatures from elsewhere that could see the light
sure.
off in the distance. So that brings the ogres from one end, the fire newts riding the giant striders from the other end, and and you guys kind of deal with those, and then you're right. You're like, oh, I want to, we want to go see what loot they had. So you guys go in the direction. Well, like you said, you've been dropping thunder waves like they were candy. You guys dropped a couple lightning bolts. Well, not noisy. It's very showy and makes a lot of
Sure.
light, right?
Well,
So
my
gaining,
my 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 sorcerer doesn't have anything that's not showy. Like he is the manipulator of fire and
yeah.
lightning. That is just his jam. So if I'm killing stuff, that's the way it's happening.
So the Dugars then, ambushed the two party members that can't really be surprised. So that was
Right.
fortunate for them. And then like because you're kind of like searching these areas, you're like there's an area with a bunch of mimics in it, and I was just like, well, what would the mimics do in a cave to try and attract a prey? Well, they're not going to turn into furniture. Like that would be pretty obviously like this is doesn't belong here.
Right.
I mean, maybe they would, but so they turn into rock formations encrusted with gems. And then again, two of the party members go and investigate that. And you guys actually, it was actually pretty lucky because um the one the both characters get stuck to the
Mm-hmm.
to the floor basically. But the one pulls out of oil of slipperiness and just douses the other one in it and
Mm-hmm.
just slides them out of the harm's way from the mimics. And of course, that's the character that has alertness and can't be surprised.
Right.
And the mimics didn't roll particularly great on their initiative, which kind of leads to like it was kind of fun because like one, I was getting tired of all the fighting a little bit, and I was like, man, I feel like I'm just lumping and piling on these guys, right? And but they just kept blundering into everything, and they wouldn't stop.
It's so true.
And so,
But like you have to understand, like we tend to play these characters as a little bit you know, chaotic or,
Mm.
gung ho, if you will. And even my character who, wears the headband of intellect, he's not dumb anymore. Um, but he's not used to making decisions. And, sadly, our leader was not actually here. So, like, of a party of five, we only had three people. We wound up playing all five characters because without them, we certainly would have died.
Yeah, it wasn't
Bad.
it wasn't going to work. So,
Um, but we just kind of kept doing because we are not used to. And even though you said, hey, we're going to have a bit of a dungeon crawl for, the next handful of sessions, that
yeah.
didn't properly translate to, okay, guys, we need to stick together. We need to look at one room at a time. Cause I've played the games where like a single room is an entire
Let me
session.
explain to everyone and set it up for basically how you guys were handling things. Have you ever seen Scooby Doo when the gang all just goes in different directions at once? That's the party.
Ruh-roh.
so so I'm looking at all these mimics and I'm looking at the players, and then I look down at the board and I was like, oh, wait a minute. They just had this big confrontation, and the Myconids came out of hiding to congratulate them and be like, oh, you guys are pretty tough. And I'm looking, I was like, their spores have a range. So I did not feel like having them slog through 8 mimics, which they would have killed them eventually, and I think they would have all been fine. But it would have been a
For sure they
slog.
would.
It would have been a slog, and it would have been really annoying. So I was like, well, the thing about mimics is they don't have a language, but they're not, but they're still intelligent. They have a 5 intelligence, right? That's well above most animals, right? So that means they can think. There's mimic colonies in I think it's in Tasha's So that kind of gave me the idea as well, because of the spores that are being exposed to some of the mimics and the players. I was like, all right, well, what if the players start kind of getting the telepathic uh and empathic, urges from the mimics, and kind of gives them an idea, well, what they're actually after. They just want to eat. That's all they care about is food. And you can tell, and they can tell that they're intelligent, but very low intelligence, so, just barely above an animal at that point, right?
Right.
They're like toddlers, feral toddlers.
Feral toddlers. That's what we
feral,
need, right?
feral toddlers, right? So,
Well, one
so
of the great things is that mimics are monstrosities.
yes,
And my character happens to have a torque or a necklace, whatever, call it whatever you want. But I have the ability to communicate with uh, monstrosities that have a language. I just can automatically communicate them. But mimics don't have a language.
yeah,
So once you enter into the telepathy, it's like, oh, well, now I can communicate with them via the spores. And because my character has a magic item from the Mage Forge product, I have the Mirror of Vanity. I basically have advantage on all persuasion checks, and I'm a charisma caster. So it's like, yeah, that's a charisma check at +9 at advantage. Even when I rolled poorly, like getting a 6, I was still hitting a 15.
yeah.
So it was like,
And also,
yeah, I
food
got
that they
these
don't
guys.
have, food that the mimics didn't have to fight for, wasn't really a hard sell, in my opinion.
Right.
Like, oh, you're just gonna give us food, and they just slaughtered a bunch of monsters. So, so yeah. So do you feel like that was a little heavy-handed, like as the DM? I was just like, there's got to be a
No,
better way.
I dug it, and it felt natural that, you know, as the mimics moved into the area where the spores of the myconids, were there. You know me, I'm very much, into whatever the group is going to do. And, some people in this group, they can seriously get into, lots of combat. But, for the most part, we tend to run combat light games, which leads us into the, oh crap, we're on our fourth combat for the night. Oh, there's a way to talk ourselves out of this one. I'm here for it. Let's do it. And it's in something that my character excels in. I'm doubling down. Let's do this.
Yeah, and so that's where we kind of left off, right? And that's why we're talking about mimics tonight. That's like 13 minutes of like, and this is why we're talking about mimics. Um,
So looking up on D&D Beyond, there's not a whole lot of mimic entries. You've got a regular mimic, a horde mimic, a giant mimic, a spitting mimic, a juvenile mimic, and a mimic chair. For legitimate stat blocks that are there. So not as much as I would like. But when you start branching out, it's very easy to kind of dial any of those up or down, giving you some, extra things to kind of play with. I know Mimic has become so far ingrained within culture, within the D&D culture or gaming culture, that there's paraphernalia that are out there. You can find companies like Galadora Games where you can buy like the Mimic set, where it's like you can get it painted or unpainted, but it has the Mimic object and the terrain object. So you can put the scatter out there, and when the players go and touch it, you pull out the chair and you put in the mimic. Oh, you take out the mirror and you put in the mimic. And they've got scads of these things, which I've over the years picked up the whole collection because they're mimics and I have to have them all. I mean, I literally in my box of or in my supply of minis, I have a box that is just mimics.
1985 games, their logo is, or
A cassette tape that's a mimic.
yeah, and I think they did like a whole pin set too, where it was all like modern stuff, but mimics anyway. But like, so here's the one thing about the mimic, right? And it's just actually something I love about 5e. and that is the false appearance. While the mimic
Hmm.
remains motionless, is indistinguishable from an ordinary object. It's just, one sentence, but in that one sentence, it basically tells you if something has false appearance, you had zero way of discerning what it is aside from perhaps magic. Which is a
And
really cool feature because there's no checks, there's no nothing.
yeah, and I wouldn't even think magic would allow you to see it unless you do something like True Sight. I think True Sight is the only thing that's gonna get you there, and even then, that could be argued.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Actually, that was one of the things I meant to look up was True Sight because I am curious to see if that automatically does. I think it does reveal shape changers,
yes.
shapeshifters. So now that would reveal a mimic, but maybe not a piercer, because
Mm,
a piercer doesn't change into a stalactite or
right.
stalagmite. It's just what they look like. Yeah, and
Yep.
there's and
Yep.
there's there's other monsters like that as well, like a gargoyle, right? They're not shape changers. You just can't tell that it's not a statue. Of course, everyone knows if you see a gargoyle, attack it. Uh,
What
just
is
in
your
case.
vendetta against the statues in my castle? I'm sorry, I thought it was a gargoyle. The last 15 weren't, but this one could have been.
Yeah, yeah. Um, fun.
So, oh, go for it.
I was just gonna say, fun fact. The gargoyle existed, and then they came up with the folklore for it. Because it's something like it's Latin or something for gargle because of the
Mhm.
fact that the water will run out the mouth.
Yeah, the original concept of the gargoyle, they were, out juts to get the water away from the walls, and the water moving through the rocky, chasm, if you will, would have a little bit of a gargling sound. So, the gargle became gargoyle, over the time, for the little bit of historical tidbit knowledge that I have with that.
And then the folklore evolved around after the fact. And,
Hmm.
instead a lot of times, the folklore comes first. Um, no, so I love that ability just because in previous editions, like you'd always have to contest with skill checks and be like, and everyone's
Hmm.
poking and prodding. But 580 said, let's just remove that, right?
And to
So,
me, that is glory. That is just absolutely awesome. There is no check that you can make. To me, I feel like the mimic's adhesion is a choice that they can make or not. So if somebody comes up and just kind of pokes the chest with a 10-foot pole, the mimic could be like, I've seen this trick before. I'm not gonna activate my adhesion. And then when the person goes to touch it for real, like, it's like, I got you.
well, I mean,
Um,
technically, it does say that the mimic hears to anything that touches it. So it might just be but only when they're in the form of an object.
hmm. So I don't know. As with everything, it's all subject to how you want to play it at your table. But that tends to be what I like to do.
Uh,
Um, just not that I have a whole lot of people trying to outsmart my mimics. Um, let's face it. I don't think I use them as often as yourself. But I do really love them. I think they're great, and they can be used on a lot of different levels.
I mean, in our
Um,
out of the box encounters, we do have a little monster BFF action going on. We have
we do.
the mimic outhouse uh, that is besties with an Adiug,
Indeed.
which is probably one of my favorite encounters in there. It's just funny, and I
That
also
is,
love Adiugs as well. I've used quite a few of those over the dude. It is literally the Star Wars trash monster. How can you not just use it every time?
I mean, it's got tentacles, it's got a big maul, and it
Yeah.
tends to be around filth. It's that fits. Now with going back to mimics, I've been gaming for going on 35 years at this point in time, and I cannot recall any time before last night where I, as a player, got to actually converse with a mimic.
Mm.
Now, once you expand it beyond to games that I've watched and games that I've run, there were two other. I'm gonna relegate the concept to NPC. Um, but in my Curse of Narcissus game, way back when, Ryan's character, Nerdarchy Ryan, or the Nerdarchy formerly known as Ryan, whatever, his character was kidnapped, and his prison wound up being the inside of a mimic.
Yeah, that was not a run of
And
the mill mimic.
that, yeah, no, it was certainly not. And um, you guys wound up, deciding not to fight the thing. It was so long ago, I don't remember all of the details, but I wound up, creating the. I took mimic to mean chest. Chest went to Shay, and that was the name of this mimic. That was what I would constitute the cross between like a barrel mimic and a dog, you know, and that is what this creature was. And it traveled with you guys for quite some time. I think you kept it fed and what have you. It was a lot of fun. And I loved putting a mimic in as an NPC that, wasn't just, oh, let me slaughter things. And
I
then in MTD Jake's game that I was watching for a while, that the one character, I say NPC, but it's like it's a cross between an NPC and a magic item, where it's basically like a baby mimic, and its name is Ditto. And it's got powers, it's got abilities, and it's friendly towards the party, but like it wears on his shoulder or his forearm or what have you as like a piece of armor, but it's not like, oh, it's not trying to eat him all the time. And
all the time.
I love that aspect, that it's like, okay, more is being done with with mimics. And it's said this is now three instances over more than that many decades. So like, while I always have a laundry list of characters that I want to play, uh I want to play a character that I, everything else doesn't matter, class, race, what have you, but somebody who has studied, I don't know, has proficiency in Arcana or whatever skill the DM would feel applies to mimics, and has heard these stories, whether they are legends, fiction, or what have you, and wants to learn more
You want to do
about
Steve Irwin, but he's only all about mimics.
yes, 100%, and knows full well that, all right, he's probably going to have to kill some, but what is it going to take to learn about their origination? What is it going to take to actually, see, are they befriendable? Are they, are they able to, communicate in some way, shape, or form? So I feel like, it's a heavy hook for the DM. Uh, but the DM would need to have buy-in, because like, if there's no mimics to, to deal with, then, the characters, twiddling thumbs. But that's definitely one of the things that is on my to-do list at some point in time.
So in third edition, I believe there was a mimic and then there was a killer mimic, right? And the killer mimic was just a little bit better than a regular mimic.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, folks, I have a bit of a cold. And also, it could actually speak and had language. And I feel like at some point I had used one of those more of a as an NPC than as a threat, just because I also feel the way you do, and I just think they're cool and much cooler than just being a monster to murder all the time. I mean, they're cool
Right.
as that as well. I mean, my very first encounter with the mimic was my first dungeon master was running us through an adventure. It was a dungeon crawl, and there was a room with four big statues in it. and the statues were basically the from the old DMG, right? The what was it, the
Mhm.
player's handbook, where they're prying the gems out of the gem eyes out of the
Oh
statue,
yeah.
and he's got the brazier, right?
Yeah.
I think it was the player's handbook, and it was literally that scene, except for like, and that's we didn't know nothing about D&D back then, so it was like so easy. And you're like, oh well, we want the gems. He's like, well, what you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to climb up on the statue. You're gonna have to like grab the gem with one eye, with one hand, and then you're gonna have to take your dagger and try and pry it out if you want to get it out. I'm like, well, that makes sense. So all four of us do that. And then the pseudopod forms and we get punched in the face a bunch of times. And we only had a dagger to fight the mimics with,
Well, because that's how it has to go.
because that's how it has to go. Yeah, so that was my very first encounter with a mimic. Do you remember your first encounter?
I don't. I feel like it happened so long ago.
Yeah.
Much of my early days with with gaming, where a lot of my typical firsts have been blended across a massive number of GMs. Um, I can certainly say that there was a time where I don't know if it was you or Steve, where like a couple of us wound up getting stuck to the chest before it wound up opening its teeth and started chewing on us. But I mean, that was our early days of what eventually became the Nerdarchy group, where we had far more problems with you know the GM and what have you. But that was a different day and
Different
age
time.
for us.
You did introduce one of my favorite mimics.
Yeah, what's that one?
We were in a room full of all kinds of cages and traps, and there was bear traps, and there was a giant bear trap. And I looked at Ryan's character, who was like the melee warrior type, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, you gotta smack someone with a bear trap right in the face. How could you not? And he's like, yeah, I do. And it was a fucking mimic.
So
He smacked
this
himself
was
in the face.
so this was one of those things where um I don't remember what the name of it was, but Kobold Press has a um like an animated bear trap stat block or something along those lines. And I'm like, man, that would be a cool looking mimic.
Yeah.
And this was in the Curse of Zoltan game, where we had three levels of tower, all full of dangers. And this was a scenario very much like last night's gaming session, where where the players are used to, oh, there's one combat. So like you went hog wild on that first floor using
Yeah.
lots of abilities, and then you went upstairs and fought more things, and then went up to the third floor and fought more things. So like it was definitely one of those things where I'm like, well, if I had used the wizard at the top of this tower to its utmost degree, I could have killed a couple of you, if not all of you. But that wasn't the goal of the tower. The wizard was supposed to die here because he was delivering a message. He was a simulacrum.
He's like, these
But
idiots are making it so hard for me to die.
well, a little bit. But it was a scenario where I'm like, all right, I made some props, some scatter, but then made in those instances, I made the mimic equivalent out of them. So like for the stuff that was there, I was like, oh, will you touch this thing here? I'll just pull off the scatter and put on the monster. So it wound up being a question of like, he's like, oh, I go up and I grab both of them. Well, I then was like, okay, well, your one hand is stuck to this one and your other hand is stuck to that one. And it wound up becoming a fight. It's like, well, if I get stuck to the first one, I'm not touching the second one. And I'm like, well, this is what you said you did. So I let him rewind and he got stuck to the first one. But I thought it was going to be pretty amusing. Whereas like he's got both hands stuck to, these bear trap mimics that are just going to start chomping on his arms, and then he wouldn't be able to use his weapon. So, but no, we had some fun with it and what have you. But they were awesome fight. I still have them in my box of mimics, and can't wait to use them at some point in time again.
No one expects the bear trap mimic.
No, I mean, realistically, you could have anything be a mimic. So it's like when your players least expect, it's like, all right, you're gonna pull off the piece and replace it with a monster and what have you. But I did some quick research here, and if we go back all the way to Dragon Magazine number 75, I have no idea how far back that goes age wise, but there is an ecology of the mimic within that issue. Um, so I clearly don't have that one because that looks like it goes back quite a ways, but well, if maybe somebody's put it online somewhere, but looking up ecology, that's what I got.
Yeah, I mean, that used to be one of my favorite parts about the Dragon magazines. You could probably, it's probably there someplace.
I just got to look for it, and I'm not gonna sit here and oh, let's give you guys your due and invest in the conversation as much as possible. But that's something I'm gonna have to try and track down is to get a scan or a PDF of that ecology, just so that I can add that into my mimic knowledge because
Which Dragon magazine is it?
number 75.
Dragon magazine number 75. I wonder if I have it. I got a lot of them.
Yeah, this one looks like it's saying from July 1983. Um, so that was certainly well before I started playing.
No, I wouldn't have
Um,
had that one. That's for sure. That I would have been 8.
I mean, I've got scads and scads of Dragon magazines, in my gaming supply stuff, but I don't think I've got anything that old. Uh,
So we're at the halfway part mark. Want to give the spiel?
Sure. I don't have any other admin duties, so I'm certain if you look above us, you can see that cool sign that says, powered by Easy Roller Dice. Whether it's your first set of dice or your 1 million set of dice, Easy Roller Dice for all your dice rolling needs. They've been a sponsor of us and the channel for a very long time. Give them much love. Down in the description below, you're going to find a coupon code to be able to get 20% off your first order. It's great stuff. We love Easy Roller Dice. Some of my favorite dice in my collection are from ERD. So give them some love. Tell them that Nerdarchy sent you, and add some amazing dice to your ever growing collection.
So, I don't know if anyone's been checking out our Goblin Takeover of the channel. We've been kind of experimenting with some new things on the channel. We've been revamping some of our new videos or some of our really old videos and giving them new scripts and kind of a whole new spin on what we've been doing. The next one goes up tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So if you want to check that out, and if you have been checking them out, give us some feedback. Let us know. Love them, hate them. Any feedback is welcome, of course. Uh, I did find Dragon Magazine on Amazon, number 75.
How much is it?
I don't know. I don't see a price. But
Oh,
uh,
that's always scary when you come to
yeah,
the
yeah.
price.
Also, we ran a Kickstarter for Zoo Mafia. It did not succeed, but we're going to try again. So there's a link down in the description so you can go check it out and follow along. So when we do launch, if you want to be involved with Nerdarchy's first role-playing game that is 100% ours, please go sign up for that.
Indeed. Since you mentioned Zoo Mafia, if you have not checked out the Blood Moonshine campaign that Bobby Partridge just ran here on the channel, we wrapped it up, so all 12 episodes are now available to watch in case you want to go binge an amazing Zoo Mafia campaign. We now had 3 full campaigns here on the channel, as well as some smattering of one shots that exist out in the wilds. Um, we'll be taking this Tuesday off. We always have a slight break in between, but we should be back next week with yours truly at the helm as we will be returning to season 2 for Dungeons and Delving. I am super stoked to get back into this world, back into these characters, and see what kind of antics our heroes can get up to, and where they've been or what happened or what have you, because we left on a pretty big cliffhanger. So I'm excited because the players have no idea what's about to happen. So I'm super eager to get their hot take on what happens from moment one.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I mean, it was a fun concept. We had a lot of good laughs with that game. So if you want to see a different spin on D&D, you can check that out. If you haven't seen the first season, it's on the channel. There's a playlist somewhere as you can find out.
Yeah, and it's it's our typical Tuesday night campaign. So we tend to do a 12 block story arc, each being about 2 hours long. So literally, if you decide not to sleep, you can watch the whole thing in a day. Be super easy to do. Uh, but you don't necessarily have to have watched the first season to be involved, because I'm going to do a little bit of a campaign wrap up and what have you, or previously on kind of deal to get into the first episode. So it'll be a whole new story with most of the characters. Sadly, Doug will not be returning, and we've got Carlos in the group now. So we're gonna have some fun times, introduce a new character, and see what's going on.
So Zargon, was it Dave or Ted that had the mimic as a pet in Tribes of Discordia? Ted ran the game, so it was not Ted. It was kind of
Yeah,
it was more like a group pet.
it was. I don't think it belonged to anybody in particular, but the barrel dog mimic, Shay, he was definitely a lot of fun for the handful of sessions that he was around.
Yeah,
And
and
then he kind
also
of got relegated to just well, he's there, but we're not doing anything with him.
yeah, well, we kind of outgrew a mimic, I would say, eventually.
Yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
mean, things were getting pretty crazy with the tail end of that game. So,
Demon orcs and whatnot.
and what
Uh,
have you.
yeah, and also, I'm impressed everyone's hanging out with us tonight. I hear there's a big sporting event going on. What they use a
Something
sports
about
ball for?
something about a superb owl is what I've heard on social media.
Mm. Yeah, my wife and children are probably watching now.
Yeah, I don't know. There's only the one real team that I care about, and they're not in it. So,
Yeah. They started off strong and then went downhill really fast. For sure.
what are you gonna do?
It's Philly.
Uh
You get used to it.
yes, the Philly team are used
Yeah.
to that. Um, so yeah, I mean, but there's a lot of people that are into our hobby that really don't care about a soup or a bowl or any of that kind of stuff. So
Don't just Etherball, man. That's the only sport that really matters.
I mean,
So
there's a couple that could contend. I kind of miss some rat ball.
rat ball was a good one as well. Very lucrative.
Yeah, I heard you could make lots of copper with that game.
Yeah.
So Dave ran this one campaign where like we went underground and we met these kobolds, and the kobolds played rat ball, which was literally dead rats sewn together to make the ball. And so like the tails would all be like kind of falling out as they're doing playing the game. I don't remember much about how it all went down,
It
but
was kind of like a cross
uh
between like lacrosse and rugby, plus,
rugby.
yeah, plus maybe a little bit of what was what was that? What was American Gladiators?
Oh yeah.
Maybe a little bit of that thrown in there as well. But instead of the kobold tribes warring with each other, they would have tournaments instead.
They would settle their disputes with rat ball.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the most insidious way to use a mimic? I remember someone saying they, and I think it was Megan that used a mimic bed.
A mimic bed.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably have a mimic bed mini. Um,
Yeah.
but I gotta say the worst one is the horde mimic. Which we actually used the mini of last night. Um, when it's like, okay, you go and defeat the treasure, and you go to you go to defeat the monster, and you go to pick up the treasure, and that's now the new monster. So you got to fight the whole thing, being
Uh,
stuck to this, huge pile of treasure that grows teeth and starts trying to eat you. That thing, that's pretty awesome. Um,
Tally, I don't think anyone's made the Ramirez mimic yet.
but Ramirez, like as in Highlander or Ramirez?
No, as in the movie guy. I think he's the one that made the fast zombies.
Oh, okay.
Unless he's the one that did the slow zombies. I don't remember. But anyway, um, because Tally asked if anyone has made them more mobile. And that is unfortunately one of the drawbacks to the mimics. And last night that was quickly apparent because they have a speed of 15.
Well, I mean, if you watch the Honor Amongst Thieves, like the tromping chest as it's lumbering after them, that does kind of suit, but it's comical. And if you want a faster moving mimic, give it legs. I mean, they've got the ability to have pseudopods and teeth and whatever
Yeah.
have you.
Well,
Who's to say they can't?
the horde mimic's fast. The horde mimic has a movement of 30. The giant mimic 15, and the spitting mimic is 20. So, but at least with
So, like
the spitting mimic has some range. So,
as far as I'm concerned, like if you want to make an encounter more difficult, then all you really have to do is be like, all right, well, what kinds of things would this mimic have had the ability to adopt? As it's a shapeshifter, you're the one sitting behind the GM screen. What do you want to do to tailor make this encounter that much more challenging and that much more fun for all involved? I am confident that as a player character, if you just walk through every encounter and nothing seems challenging, the game is not going to be as fun. You want those moments of tension and be like, holy crap, are we going to survive through this? If you go through an entire campaign and you don't question whether or not you're going to survive a battle or three, that's not being done right. And that's my opinion, but that's there. So times, yeah, I'm gonna dial up an encounter. I'm gonna find a way. Like, okay, I want to use this monster. I like everything about it except for this. Okay, well, change this, and you're golden. It says in the DMG, as the DM, change anything and everything that you like. So that's what I'm gonna do.
so in the chat they bring up the luggage from Discworld. I listened to the first Discworld book, and like I had picked up a bunch of them, and I couldn't bring myself to listen to any more of them.
Oh wow.
It just wasn't my jam. The luggage was the best part though. It like ate an army. Like the
Yeah,
luggage is indestructible.
I've heard good stuff, and I've been so long removed from
Mm.
getting into reading and books that I've struggled. And heck, I even got a book for Christmas, and it's now almost a month and a half later, or it is a month and a half later, and I had to go back and reread the first book. I only made it about halfway through, and as much as I loved it the first time through, I've just been so preoccupied with all these other things that I haven't managed to, get back to it now in almost a month of not touching it. So it's a little frustrating. So at some point in time I might get the Discworld, but who knows?
Zargon still waiting for the rap ball t-shirts. Dude, if we did a rap ball shirt, it would have to be like a hockey jersey or something.
Mm.
That would be great though.
Yeah, I wish I wish I could do shirts for the different teams for Dungeons and Delving. I think that would have been a hot take.
Oh, that would have been fun too, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't
Paul
remember
could have
anybody.
worn
I don't even remember our team's name, let alone anyone else's.
sensational chimeras.
How can I forget that? I was thinking something would come here, but I was like, was that our team? Was that a different team? That feels
No,
like
that was you guys.
that game feels like so long ago at this point.
Just because it was a year and a half ago.
Was it that long?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So you guys were the sensational chimeras. Then you were up against Team Shining Unicorn, Black Razor's Revenge, Flumps, the Gibbering Mouthers, and the Displacer Beasts.
Hmm. So Zargon says mimics distract quicklings. You don't really have to do that. Just haste your mimics. Give them boots
Eh,
of speed. Why is that chest wearing boots? I although I did haste quicklings one time and use them, and it was super
Yeah.
mean. It was super mean. I have no
Didn't
regrets.
didn't you shred somebody with that? Because that was you hasted them when it doubled their attacks, not just increased it. Because like they already had a ridiculous number of attacks.
I don't I don't know if I did that or if it was in the Scarlet Sisterhood game. I think I used hasted quicklings against them.
Okay, well I'm pretty sure you might have done it in earlier editions as well.
That's also a good possibility because it's kind of a
Because I
dick move, and yeah.
because I'm pretty sure there was a time where it's like, all right, you see a blur of motion, and whoever it was, like, you take, the horde of dice that hit the ground, and it was enough to be like, all right, they're on the ground bleeding to death from, 37 cuts or whatever it was. It was
From a
like,
dagger.
it was
Yeah.
like, what the frick?
What's red
Yeah,
and
it
green? It
was,
goes really fast. The half work in a blender. The half work in the hasted quickling.
yeah, it was crazy, but again, another time.
Miss Rob's cleaning service. Mr. Rob's cleaning service. I'm in for the wrap ball hockey sweater. I don't know. We might have to revisit that. That was a lot of fun. I think it's fun to put sports into games as well. And with us about to do the Dungeons and Delving, that's kind of like it's kind of like an extreme sport meets reality TV. So that's a nice concept. Um, so I know we've talked about too about using ships in the past that were mimics in one of our like nautical discussions.
I think so.
Maybe slightly inspired by the Pirates of Darkwater, because didn't like the big bad pirate, didn't his ship just basically eat other ships?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it was one of those things that he would just, they'd come up on him and just, would bite the other ships in half.
Yeah. So yeah, that seems like that would be a great use of a mimic. We've also discussed using uh like haunted houses, but instead of it actually being haunted, the whole house is just a mimic. Um, which would be a lot of fun too. Like also, like kind of ripping off of like Star Wars and things of that nature, where you're like adventuring inside the monster, but the monster's the mimic, and maybe it has other things that are basically mimics as well inside. So it's just a fun house of mimics.
It's pretty crazy.
So do you have any ideas what you're going to do with the mimics you guys have just acquired?
Uh so part of me wants to, you know, see what I might be able to learn with my having the, the monstrous torque, my necklace that allows me to talk to monstrosities. Hoping to learn a little bit more, and maybe if we keep them happy and fed, maybe we can, have them as scouts. Maybe we can have them uh be something that is able to uh keep us alive a little bit longer. I know we were able to feed them a bunch of the ogre bodies and be like, all right, well, now that you're happy and satiated and not going to try and eat us, we're going to sit here and rest now and try to get back some of these hit points, because like I said, we got hurt pretty bad. um and then hopefully once we can all talk as a group with our two long lost players that were technically there and now they'll be able to weigh in, maybe we'll come up with some cool plans of how to use these guys, or maybe we'll just send them on their way, and you know maybe they'll eat other things that are out there and we won't have to worry about them.
They're like gonna follow you back to Crystalia, to the city that you guys are from. You're just not gonna be able to get rid of them. It's like a stray animal when you feed it; they just won't go away.
Well, once we get back to our bikes and start moving at a speed of 120, I don't
Mhm.
think they're going to be able to follow.
They learn to mimic your bikes.
That would be hysterical.
Uh,
Uh, so I will say, if you're looking for Dungeons and Delving, this was actually played on when we were using Nerdarchy Live. So you are going to have to actually go to that channel to watch the original season. And I can't find a specific date here, but according to this, it was streamed 2 years ago. So it's definitely got some time spent
we'll
to
have to create a playlist on the Nerdarchy channel so people can just find it from Nerdarchy. That make it
yep,
easier, especially after we get underway with the second season.
indeed.
If people do want to go back and check it out. So, have you had any thoughts to how you would modify a mimic? Like, if you were to make because you said like you were lamenting that you felt like there weren't enough mimic stat blocks.
Sure. So what I do when I'm looking to alter mimics is like, all right, well, what is it currently mimicking? And is there something that I can work with that? Um, is there a magic item that it's been exposed to that it might have drawn from or had the ability to copy some of its powers? With the concept of mimicry, of copying, I want to have my mimics be able to learn and adapt and gain the things from what is around it. Be it, people, things, monsters, what have you. Uh that's what I look to do. And if I don't already have what I want to give it, well, then I find a way, like, okay, well, maybe I do need to create an item that has that, or I need to put a monster in there that can do something so that I can craft the encounter that I'm looking for. Um, just to make it be that fun and interesting combat that I'm looking for.
I'm kind of thinking about a video we did a while back, about trolls and how like it says on their trolls, like if they eat a lot of a thing, that they can start taking
Mm-hmm.
on those properties or qualities, or maybe their offspring do. Yeah,
Right.
what do you think about a tribe of trolls who have found plenty of mimics to eat? What would their offspring be like, or what mutation might that cause in the trolls?
Well, I mean, that could turn trolls into straight up doppelgangers. Or even worse, like if it's already a humanoid, well, perhaps it can take the shape of other things and still be a humanoid. Maybe it's, maybe it has the full polymorph effect into other humanoids. Maybe not like, full on, oh well, let me turn into, you know a quadruped. um but I can be a chest of drawers, or I can be a freaking hill giant. Boom. Depends upon what kind of limitations you want to kind of work with. But to
I
me, anytime you start talking about the trolls eating things, which I am super in love with that lore, and I've been kind of threatening to do a blog post series, like where there's like 2 or 3 articles all about the trolls, being mutants. Um, and I just haven't gotten off my butt and done it in a while. Um,
So I have
but
two
I
thoughts, right? Like,
go for it.
one is the classic Plastic Man, where like he can turn into anything, but he always still has the same color scheme. So like whatever they turn into, they're still like olive green colored. Well, no matter
That
what
is
it is.
hysterical.
But the other is like they actually take on the mimic's ability to just mimic objects, not other humanoids or shape change into anything, but any object, right? So, whatever they choose, whether it's a door, a barrel, a chest, or whatever, imagine your adventurer goes to grab it and they stick to it and they're like, oh no, a mimic. But then out of it, instead of a pseudopod, morphs an actual troll head that is now trying to bite and chew on them. And then the claws come out of a troll as well. And they're trying to just rip them apart and basically, it's just troll parts coming out of a chest or a barrel or whatever, keeping them kind of grappled and stuck to them. Because that's part of the thing with the mimic too. Their ability to stick and adhere is only when they're in the form of an object.
Right. So I now, like, because I haven't done any kit bashing in a while, but I now want to take a troll mini and a
Uh,
and a large chest, and I want to put the arms, the head, and the legs like onto the chest. It's like, all right, the legs are there, the arms are there, but instead of like a full on torso, nope, it's just this big chest.
yeah, like I'm picturing like a swan or ostrich neck, but with the troll head on it, just
Oh
like
no, I was
fighting.
gonna I was just gonna have the head like coming straight off of the
Yeah,
the
yeah,
lid of
yeah.
the chest. I'm just like, ah.
Well, no, no, I get it for the kit bashing, but like
Yeah.
I'm just like picturing it moving
Oh
around
yeah.
almost like a serpent, and how like creepy and disgusting that
Yeah,
would
that
be.
that would be fun and slightly terrifying.
And also, it's a troll, so it can also talk at them as well.
Yeah,
At
that
least
is that is another
you
great part about,
you don't have to deal with a mimic trying to talk at you and banter. At least they're too busy nom nom nomming.
indeed. Excuse me.
Mimics putting you to
It's a
sleep, man.
No, I'm just really tired. I myself have been fighting a cold for about 10 days myself. So while I am mostly through it, it has certainly affected my sleep. And as we kind of talked about, before we hit the go live button, I've had a little bit of a stressful day. My daughter just recently had a birthday, and my house was invaded by a whole bunch of tweens today. So
Far worse than a colony of mimics. So much worse.
so we had some fun times, and you know phone calls of hey, this person's trying to injure themselves, and never easy to deal with.
Well, on that note, way to be a downer, Ted.
Everybody is fine. There was no serious cause for alarm. But it was certainly stressful moments which have only impacted me further. But
So
we'll be heading out of here. As noted, we are not going to be here Tuesday night. Dave says that we got a new video dropping tomorrow,
tomorrow, yes.
and then we'll be back next Sunday night to talk about something else.
So with that, until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.